Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the absolute most fascinating bottlenecks in modern alternative finance. Imagine this. You've got a massive public cryptocurrency wallet, or maybe a private vault just packed to the brim with rare gold. You have unquestionable wealth, right? But when you stroll into an institutional lender's office to fund a multi-million-dollar real estate project, they turn you down flat. No deal. So why is that? Well, because getting institutional funding based on decentralized wealth requires bridging a massive gap. Today, we're exploring exactly how to transform raw, untraditional wealth into verified, bankable capital. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The core problem we're looking at is perfectly summarized by this single sentence. Value without evidence is merely speculation. In the traditional finance world, a client might walk in, whip out a phone, show a screenshot of a digital wallet with a massive balance, and demand a loan. But closing attorneys, title companies, and institutional lenders, they operate on strict commercial law. A massive crypto wallet or a vault of gold means absolutely nothing without legal proof. It's basically a clash between two totally different concepts. On one hand, you have philosophical value. It's this belief that just because an asset exists on a blockchain, it inherently holds purchasing power. But trying to get a multi-million-dollar loan with a screenshot? Good luck. It's filled with friction. On the other hand, you have bankable capital. This is true, institutionally recognized, court-ready, settlement-ready collateral. Safely converting that philosophical value into real bankable capital is the entire purpose of the highly synchronized ecosystem we're unpacking today. Phase 1, the illusion of wealth and the reality check. Let's start at what Justice Fund Exchange calls Gate Zero. Imagine getting laughed out of a bank with a billion-dollar screenshot. Here's the shocker. When a borrower points to a massive public digital asset balance, like, say, a Diversity Metals collateral wallet ending in 5EC, or maybe a notary chain funding wallet ending in 44E, the system assigns it an eligible collateral value of exactly $0. Yep. 0.00. Because public blockchain explorers label these as centralized exchange hot wallets, Justice Fund Exchange enforces a strict presumption of non-control. At this really early stage, those public balances are classified merely as institutional liquidity references. Now, these references are great for showing that a market actually has depth and liquidity, for sure, but they do absolutely nothing to prove that the specific client standing in front of the lender has the direct legal ownership or the authority to actually move those funds. A public balance alone just doesn't cut it. The cast of characters. Let's introduce the highly synchronized ecosystem of entities that actually fixes this $0 problem. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these four actors form an elite, highly coordinated team to verify wealth. First up is AUM, or Assets Under Management. This is your foundational wealth engine, like gold or crypto. But remember, it only counts if it's verified value under lawful control. Next is Justice Fund Exchange, or JFE, which acts as the overarching enterprise operating system orchestrating the workflow. Third is the civil law notary. They're the guardian of procedural truth, rigorously verifying identity and anchoring the evidence. And finally, Ledger Trust Bank, or LTB. This isn't a traditional depository bank. It's the transaction environment that executes the four-part settlement protocol to package verified AUM into a lender-ready file. Phase 2, establishing procedural truth. Let's follow that raw asset over to the civil law notary. The notary's sole job is to build a concrete evidentiary foundation. First, they tackle identity and authority using multi-factor biometric authentication to prove exactly who or what corporate entity is behind the asset. Second, they administer sworn oaths, bringing in corporate board resolutions to prove the client actually has the legal right to pledge those funds. Third, they package all this custody documentation into what's called an evidence manifest. And fourth, they lock it all down. That final step is the ledger lock, which applies a biometric-locked digital seal to the evidence manifest, cryptographically hashing it onto the comply chain guard or notary chain ledger. So the crucial point is, this cryptographic hash gives JFA and LTB absolute, tamper-evident proof that the documents are locked in time. The physical reality of the asset is now securely, irreversibly anchored to a digital record. Phase 3, the compliance cascade. Now we move that newly anchored asset back into the Justice Fund Exchange for intense risk mitigation. With the notary's sealed evidence good to go, JFE routes the asset through its 8-gate cascade. We're talking deep anti-money laundering checks, KYC and global sanctions screening, strict verification of the source of funds and wealth, checking for encumbrances, like are there any sneaky third-party liens or exchange withdrawal limits. It's a grueling, automated process that strips away all regulatory and financial risk from the asset's history.
Finally, the system applies what's known as a haircut, which is a strict valuation discount based on the specific asset's liquidity and legal classification. And this brilliantly illustrates how a raw numismatic coin or a digital asset is buffered against wild market swings. It protects the lenders and ensures completely consistent lending standards across the board, no matter what kind of alternative wealth we're talking about. Phase 4. Final Settlement Protocol. We are entering the final act where Ledger Trust Bank packages the fully cleared asset. Ledger Trust Bank takes all that notary-anchored evidence and JFE compliance clearance and executes a strict sequential process to legally convert philosophical wealth into a real financial instrument. Step 1 is proof of funds, providing that finalized notary chain record of exactly who owns the AUM and its precise valuation. Step 2 is collateral control. This creates a formal binding agreement between the custodian, the borrower, and the lender, so the asset cannot be moved. And Step 3 brings in transaction counsel for UCC Article 9 perfection. UCC Article 9 perfection is absolutely crucial. It's the commercial law step that legally binds the specific verified collateral to the debt. Think of it as a massive legal public billboard. It completely prevents a borrower from secretly moving the asset or double pledging the exact same collateral to someone else. Let me be clear. Without this massive legal filing, title companies and institutional lenders will simply walk away from a deal, no questions asked. So, what does this all mean? Why does this whole intensive process actually matter? Because now, that fully authenticated, legally bound asset can enter the LBO to LCO continuum. It seamlessly transitions from initial leverage buyout bridge financing, getting that crucial initial capital to launch a massive project, into liquidity capital optimization once things stabilize. Your verified wealth literally becomes a perpetual growth engine for real-world project funding. We've traced the incredible journey from raw, speculative holdings to fully verified, institutionally bankable capital. The Justice Fund Exchange ecosystem proves that trust isn't just assumed, it has to be systematically manufactured through evidence, law, and digital anchoring. So I want to leave you with this final provocative question to think about. Look at your own assets. Is your wealth just a philosophical screenshot sitting on a public explorer? Or have you done the work to transform it into verified capital? Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and I hope this gave you a brand new perspective on the architecture of modern trust.